and confident in this next hour. I've muted everyone upon entrance, but I can't stress enough, we want to hear from you. Lots of crazy things going on in the world. You could be doing anything else, but you're deciding to be present with us for the hour. So I just want to say thank you for joining us. And with that said, your participation is key. So although I've muted everyone upon entrance, I would love to invite you to unmute yourselves whenever you have something you want to share. If it's, a story that you can bring to the table for us to, talk about in this next hour, that would be great. If it's your own personal experience or your own tips and tricks, again, we want to hear from you. So feel free to unmute yourself at any point, or you can drop anything in the chat box, and I'll flag that to our guest speaker throughout the hour. If anyone has any personal or sensitive information and they prefer to be kept anonymous, you can write to me privately. You can find me in the chat box under Mariella Marie. You can write to me privately, and I will keep your reflection or your comment anonymous and raise that to our guest speaker so that she can dive in deep there. The last thing I'll say is we'd love for you to follow us on socials and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can keep up with all the great chats we've got in store. And just so that I don't waste too much more time, because I know that our guest speaker has a lot of knowledge to drop today, I'm going to pass the mic to our guest speaker who's calling from San Francisco. Vaishnavi, let us know a little bit about yourself, how you came to learn about Power to Fly, and what you're excited to share with us today.
Absolutely. I attended one of the Power to Fly events in San Francisco. It was really a technical discussion, but I really loved the organization on the whole. And so I just joined the newsletter, and then I heard about all of the mentorship opportunities, and I said, "Yeah, sign me up." This sounds great, because I wanted to reach out to more folks to help. As a mentor, that's really important to me. So that's really it. And more about me, I mean, I've been in the engineering space for 15 plus years, had a lot of leadership roles. um, to me, this topic of volunteering is very core, and I've over all of these years, um, I've been on a constant quest to make a positive impact around me, and so I've always sought volunteering opportunities towards that. And I later on realized through that how much it has helped me grow as a leader, and that's the experience that I wanted to share with everybody.
Awesome. So you all have submitted some great questions previous to this chat. So if you hear your question come up and you're live with us today, we want to know that you're here. So you can just do that by letting us know in the chat. Or if you want to add something to the question, now's the time to chime in as well. And if you hear the question and it's not yours that you submitted, again, we still want to hear from you. So feel free to chime in whenever you'd like. So let's start with this first question here. Can you explain how to become a leader when you're not in a leader's role? What are the best etiquettes without coming across as overbearing, as there are different boundaries when being a leader, but not a leader on the team?
That's a great question. I kind of want to explore this and break this up further down, right? I really want to hear from everybody. What do you think a leader does, or what do you think are qualities of a leader? I mean, we can have this interactive and then go from there. Yeah.
Great. So let's take the invitation to use the chat box. Let's write, how do we define leadership? We'll go ahead and take some time to contemplate and then drop in the chat box, maybe one word or a couple of words. How do you all define leadership? All right. And well, as people are thinking of what they want to write, I will say, you know what? I have this sign in front of me that is in Spanish that reads, "What is success?" So I think that a leader's role is to be redefining what success is constantly, and with the mindset of inclusion. So having that mindset to, ask who's missing at the table, and how can I be more innovative, and how can I, develop my emotional intelligence to practice active listening, to practice empathy. And I can dive in deeper, but I want to give other folks the floor here. So we've got Monica, who writes encouraging while teaching. Limor writes inspiring others, supporting, providing vision and direction, empowering others. Vaishnavi, do you want to comment on any of these?
Yeah. So I wanted, and it's great because that's what the essence is about, right? It's about empathy, it's about mentorship, it's about leading with a vision. You're leading with a vision, you're executing through influence, through delegation, through decision making, right? So these are kind of your core needs as a leader, right? So when we're looking at it, and going back to the question, how do you go ahead, build this, and what are the skills and qualities that you need to further talk about that? And I feel it's relationship building, it's the decision making, it's communication. These are kind of your essence, right? And more importantly, what I feel is it's the qualities, it's resilience, it's perspective, it's compassion. It could be, of course, I think you already mentioned about creativity. To me, humility and adaptability are, again, two very key cornerstones of leadership qualities. So if you want to be a good leader, you're trying to build these skills and these qualities. So we go back to the question, I think it's to introspect. How do you go about building these? What do you already have? Where do you want to build upon those strengths? What qualities do you want to develop? And then kind of identify opportunities to go ahead and develop that. And that's where, coming back to volunteering to be a leader and wanting to find these opportunities, I would say identify what are those qualities that you want to build within yourself, and look for those opportunities, possibly outside your organization, to go ahead and practice that. And that is how you can, it's like muscle memory, right? At the end of the day, every leadership quality is needs to be inculcated, needs to be developed, and that happens with experience, with practice. And it's the classic, how do you get there? You get there with experience. And that's the challenge in a normal organization structure, right? You don't get opportunities because you don't have the experience, and it's a vicious cycle. But if you start looking for opportunities in a volunteer organization, right, you can volunteer anywhere. That helps you build some of these qualities, and that's what the perspective I would share here.
I love that, putting it into practice, which means putting one foot in front of the other and not just saying, oh, you have to be born a leader or you don't have it. It's, that practice piece is key. So that makes it available and accessible for anyone. I love that you're highlighting that. Can I ask, what challenges do you see now with the current state of the world, with the pandemic? Any challenges on seeking, leadership opportunities when we have, this virtual world that we're confronted with to work and to, discover the world and ourselves behind our screen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely, with the pandemic, your opportunities are way different, right? I wouldn't say that you do not have opportunities. You do not have the traditional opportunities, right? Traditionally, like I have volunteered with scouts team, or with the school, with the PTA, several things, or with meal packing, where you're actually going in person. You're meeting a bunch of folks and doing those things. But interestingly, even through the pandemic, all of those necessities have existed, right? It's just that they've all become virtual. So I still feel every organization still has opportunities for involving and engaging people. It's just that the type of skills and the type of opportunities may be different, but they're still out there. And I know, as part of one of the organizations I work with, outreach through social media became vital, and that's something we were looking for, more people to volunteer and step in. So those opportunities are out there. You're probably building a little different types of skills, but you're still building those skills.
Yes, lots of confidence comes, and also that balance, because we can really get sucked into social media. So it's like being intentional, setting that time aside to network with, with intention so that you can develop some sort of skill and develop your network also. I know it was kind of like taboo almost to be like, well, I'm not a marketer, I'm not a publicist. I feel uncomfortable, doing that and showing that part of myself on social media. But I think if we find a nice balance and if we set some time to, like you said, practice with intention, that we can reach those goals. So thank you for highlighting that as well. Anything else you want to flag to our live callers? I love that they're already chiming in on how they, how they define leadership. Is there anything else that you'd like to ask our live audience so that you can see where we are in our journeys?
Yeah, I think I would like to ask, like, what are the impediments each one has faced? Like, where does everybody feel it's difficult to learn how to be a leader?
Okay, so as folks are thinking of that question and thinking of their response, to drop in the chat box, I will pose another question here so that we can keep the conversation moving. So what 3 things should I be doing to stand out?
That's a great question, and I was wondering about it when I saw that question as well. In the website, and to me, it's difficult to say what are the 3 things that you can stand out in any setting. And when I thought through it, I feel there are 3 vital aspects. One is authenticity, right? That's never going to get old. That's always relevant in every setting, because if you want to stand out, be authentic. That's the way you stand out, because people are going to recognize your authenticity, and a true leader needs to be authentic. Be true to yourself, right? The second thing is, again, integrity, because in most settings that's vital. You need to demonstrate the integrity. All of the others are kind of fade in comparison to these 2, in my mind. And one of the more common, of course, is communication, right? You need to be able to communicate, and that you are effectively going to be a leader, and show initiative. So it's probably show initiative is more important than communication, but communication is kind of like your underlying build that confidence to communicate. Doesn't mean that you need to be great at public speaking, right? Like I'm not fabulous at public speaking, honestly, but once you get into the authenticity and the integrity, you are more comfortable, and then you can just communicate well on what you're looking to do.
Awesome. So we've got some folks writing their reflections in the chat box. So Monica writes, for me, it's hard to be a leader for my peers only because of my title organization. Unfortunately, there's still an idea that no one is a leader if they don't have the title to back it up. To counteract this, I always make sure that I present myself as a leader or influencer. Would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, that's a great observation. And I feel a lot of times, many of us are bogged down by the title. And I think titles
back to playing tennis when I haven't done it in a long time.
Titles are fine in an organization setting, but to the minute you start behaving as a leader, as Monica has mentioned, presenting yourself as a leader, influencing decisions, showing that you have initiative, those are good stepping stones to get that leadership title that you might be looking for. And sometimes it's okay not even to have the title, because you are doing the job of a leader, and it's nice to be in the sidelines. You can still lead in the sidelines. It's probably less stress that way.
And I'd love to hear you speak to, so maybe in this situation, Monica and other folks who are experiencing the same conundrum, maybe in that moment they don't get the recognition, but how can they translate this, into a future resume or cover letter or portfolio to show people that, although I didn't have the title, I was able to do X, Y, Z and take on this leadership role without the title of being, the CEO, let's say.
Absolutely. And I think it all boils down to demonstrating through examples, what have you achieved, right? And truly for leadership, going back to what we were discussing earlier, the mentorship, executing to a vision, right? Showing your influence, showing how you overcame relationship problems, right? To say, okay, hey, I built this relationship with these stakeholders, or I'm good at relationship building through this example. I think those are valuable qualities that you want to demonstrate, irrespective of your title, because at the bottom line is those qualities that matter, right? Where we were talking about the empathy, where the mentorship, the relationship building. So when you start demonstrating how you have experienced those scenarios and how you've demonstrated those qualities in your resume, I think you can still get leadership positions irrespective of the title.
Thank you for that clarification. I just wanted to, I was curious to see what you thought about that, because often here at Power to Fly, we speak about how to, translate some of those soft skills on paper, because it's hard to show your soft skills with words on paper. You have to see the person in the moment and see if they can practice what they preach, for example. So I love that you're highlighting, that initiative. To also, someone mentioned, on a couple of interviews that I've had, actually a couple of folks have mentioned the importance of having like a brag folder that you keep personally, but you remember, okay, this is what I did. I was able to lead X amount of people and, get this, reach this goal, so that you can remind yourself that even though, maybe someone isn't seeing you as, officially with the title, you have gone through these processes. So thank you for that. This next question is a little, oh yes.
Further on that, sorry. What you said kind of resonated with one thing. We always second guess ourselves, like most people end up second guessing. And I think that's where it's important to take a step back to appreciate what you have achieved, right? And nothing is too small or too big, because the minute you start looking at what have you gained from any experience, you're demonstrating to the other person that I'm constantly learning. I'm able to take any situation and learn from that and build those qualities. So I think that's very important, to not second guess yourself and even take the small things, because all of it matters.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. Okay, so this next question, how can I move from an IC role to a leadership role?
So I think that kind of goes into a little bit more details on how do you go about with this volunteering opportunities, right? And typically, as I was mentioning earlier, it's hard in a traditional setting, right? Your organization might have certain needs, and therefore not opportunities for you to take a leadership role, right? So in such settings, how do you go about building that confidence, building that leadership skills? And that's where this idea of volunteering comes into play. And by volunteering, I don't really mean like, hey, volunteering at work, hey, I will be a leader. That not necessarily that, but it is taking up these opportunities in other organizations. Try out. Maybe you are involved with your kids' school, and they are in need for somebody to do fundraising, right? Or maybe with a community service organization, they are looking for somebody to do outreach. So there are different opportunities that you should be on the lookout for. And even there, I think there's a formula, right? Like you first need to understand what are the impediments, what are the challenges that you want to overcome, what are your strengths, because you want to balance your strengths and what you want to grow into. You don't want to get into something that's completely uncomfortable, because then you're trying to learn a whole lot. Instead, start with one strength. Maybe you are passionate about science, and there's a team of students looking to participate in the Science Bowl, and they're looking for a coach, right? So these are ways that you can look for, hey, that's my strength, but managing a team is something I want to build upon. Maybe this is an opportunity that will go about building that. So I would really lay that framework, identifying your impediments, identifying what are your strengths that you can kind of juxtapose, maybe find a purpose that resonates with you, like it could be youth development, or it could be hey, I want to end world hunger, whatever it is. There's millions of organizations looking to make an impact in the world, where you can play a part in it and thereby develop your skills. So as an independent contributor, I would say, yes, you want to keep looking for opportunities in your organization, but within your organization, you also want to showcase some of these skills. And to showcase, you need to build that, develop that experience, and therefore you want to kind of look for these opportunities outside within this framework that I described, that can help build upon build that within you, which you can come back and showcase at work, saying, hey, I faced this particular situation, this is how I dealt with, and that kind of gives others confidence to start putting you into those roles.
I love that. Essentially, you're speaking about self-awareness, starting there, right? And because you're saying, reflect and write down. So it seems like you are a fan of writing. I don't know if you're a fan of journaling, but at least making lists to like compare and get it out of your head and see that visual representation of you. Are there any other tips or resources you can suggest for someone? It might not be as easy to, have that internal reflection. Let's say there's not enough time. These are some of the common things I hear. I don't have enough time, or it makes me uncomfortable, or I just haven't found the way to do it. Anything you can suggest to our live callers to do?
Yeah, I love thinking while I walk. So each one has something different that makes you kind of wander a little bit. You need to let your mind wander a little bit for you to get into that zone of self-reflection. It is absolutely hard, and we hear about so much of mindfulness and meditation and all of those practices, which may not be easy for everybody to inculcate, right? So it's really trying to find out what works for you. Again, that also leads to self-reflection, but some of these will be natural, right? You recognize, yeah, I think better when I'm in the shower, or I think better when I walk, or I think better when I talk to somebody. For most of us, it's just about, hey, bouncing it off with a friend. So maybe there's a supporter in your organization who knows you, and you could talk to them as well. And sometimes managers are there, your leaders, they could help you if you explain, hey, this is what I'm looking for, what do you think? And that feedback can play a role into building that self-awareness.
And what do you think about sponsorships? Because I know that oftentimes folks have a question, what's the difference between mentorship and sponsorship? And it seems like, although you're saying, reach outside of the organization to seek volunteer opportunities to develop your leadership skills, that this internal dialogue is kind of still necessary so that you can have someone say, yes, I'm advocating for what Mary wants to do, because it's, I see what she's doing outside of the organization, volunteering for this. Let's put all of the tips that you're saying into one. Can you speak a little bit about sponsorship and what your opinion is on sponsorships?
Opinion is, I'm sure, like everybody should have a sponsor. Again, it's not easy to find sponsors, right? It goes back to relationship building in order to find sponsors. But yes, if you have an environment where you can reach out to folks, who can sponsor you, that's awesome, because that's going to build a foundation for your success in your organization, right? Because you already have somebody who trusts you. And bottom line, it's all about relationship building and the trust that kind of lays a foundation into becoming growing in the organization, right? Whatever be the role, not necessarily just leadership, right? So I think to that effect, sponsorship is great. It is hard. It goes back to kind of the core of relationship building, awareness, and maybe sometimes stepping away from your core team, reaching out, networking with others is where you might recognize some good sponsors.
Awesome. Thank you for that clarification. So let's move on to this next question here. How can I practice leadership skills if I am not a supervisor?
Yeah, and to me, I think leadership is not the same as supervisor. I think you're still being a leader with um, all of these other aspects, right? When we're talking about influencing, and I think Monica said it really brilliantly, right? So presenting yourself as a leader with influencing, presenting the initiative, um, is all important, even beyond just managing a team or supervising a team. That's just one aspect. And I think when you're talking about mentorship and teamwork, it goes beyond just supervising. So I would um, encourage to go beyond the mindset that only supervising means being a leader. I think there are so many other aspects of being a leader, and with those other aspects, eventually you're going to get into roles of leading a team. And and especially now, most organizations are going into this matrix organizations. There are people who are leading who may not necessarily have people rolling up to them, but they're still leading. They're delivering on certain aspects. So yeah, it's just to kind of come out of that mindset, which is traditional, right? Traditionally, you would say, hey, that's what it is. And I think now most organizations are going away from that. So I would just say it's okay not to be a supervisor. You can still build on your leadership skills.
I love that perspective. I often love speaking about on the channelers and just in my daily life, just how, and you call it traditional, and I'm a little more provocative with the way that I say it, how we can reflect on decolonizing the mind. So we have this one way of like, what does leadership mean? Leadership means this, but it comes from what gave us that definition. Lots of things, lots of cultural aspects, like lots of societal influences. So I love this moment of awareness that you're saying, but I can still practice leadership if I'm not a supervisor, because that is, in my opinion, that is kind of changing the way that we've been programmed to think of leadership. So I love that you're highlighting that. Thank you.
Yeah, and absolutely. Thinking about it, to me, a leader also needs to be humble. So what I've seen is in a traditional setting, right? So you're leading, let's say you are a team leader, and you've already built the kind of equation of how you're managing your team, and then maybe you're just saying XYZ and they're just going to execute. You don't even need to worry about influencing. It just goes like clockwork because you've established. But with that, what happens is you start losing perspective. You start kind of taking things for granted. And to me, even a seasoned leader should kind of step out of that. And it's been helpful for me when I've seen taking on some roles in a volunteer organization, let's say, where I'm not necessarily leading anything, but I'm following what somebody else, I'm just being an executor. And that gives me perspective. That makes me more humble to say, hey, now I realize maybe these are ways I can be a better leader. Maybe if I communicate in this particular fashion, it's going to make a difference. So you learn by not being a leader on how to be a better leader.
I love that. I love that. And I know that, I know that you could probably philosophize with me on that a lot, but just for the sake of time, we'll move on to this next question here. And again, but Vaishnavi, if you do want to dive in deep, you have the mic, so feel free to do so. Okay, so this next question here, how to become a good architect?
That's interesting. To me, architect requires perspective, right? I'm not going to get into the architect of, in terms of the technical skills. That again fades in comparison to the soft skills that you need. To be a good architect, you really need to build perspective. You need to have an empathy to understand what is the problem that you're trying to solve, right? So when you're architecting solutions, you're trying to architect to solve a problem, right? And problem solving requires the perspective and the empathy to recognize what is it that's needed. And I have seen, and I often see this example even at work, a lot of things, it's architected for meeting some of the what's popular and fashionable in the industry, right? But sometimes you have to architect for the basics. How are you going to architect for customer experience? And that's it, right? Like what is the underlying person that you're trying to serve through your solution, and you have to architect for that. What are the problems? Kind of foresee what are the problems that's going to be there. How are you going to better serve? How can you ensure? Why do we talk about scalability? Why do we talk about performance? All of it kind of go back to what is the essence. You know, they're not just buzzwords that you have a checklist and say, okay, yes, my solution meets all of this, but really to recognize why are each of those elements important, and that naturally gives you what you need to prioritize in your solution.
Again, that takes setting time to be intentional, so you can, connect the dots in a different way and unravel and see, well, let's just toss all this out and actually maybe I need to career pivot. Some of these big questions might come up as we are reflecting. And I love that you're posing that to the audience, to be intentional about that, and to also, use their creativity to create, the way that they can practice self-awareness and empathy to be a better leader. Let's move to this question here. How can I be resilient if my volunteering is passively ignored?
I would like to ask further what types of volunteering is being alluded to here. I'm assuming here that it refers to where, in an organization somebody is presenting, hey, there's this project coming up, who would like to take it up, and you're volunteering for it and you're ignored. I'm assuming it's to do with that. And if the person here is here and would like to kind of clarify, that would be awesome, so that I'm not responding based on certain assumptions. So do you want to pause for that?
Yes. If this was your question about how can you be resilient if your volunteering is passively ignored, let us know a little more if you can, a little more information if you can. You can write to me privately if it's sensitive information, or you can just drop in the chat box. But let's say, Vaishnavi, go ahead and take what you assume, and we'll wait for that person to see if they're on the line for clarification.
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, resilience itself is an important attribute of leadership. And we've seen in the pandemic how many organizations have become more successful because they were resilient, right? And resilience and adaptability, I think both are important. So to me, it's important just to build that skills and say it's okay. Hey, maybe goes back to that intentional self-awareness, right? It goes back to what do you think, and maybe here it also boils down to sponsorship. Maybe get feedback. Why do you think my volunteering for a particular role or opportunity is ignored? And that feedback, maybe it's the way you presented the initiative, or maybe it's because the experience was not demonstrated. So it goes back to identifying what were those impediments, and then recognizing, are those skills present? If not, go ahead and build that through what we were talking about in terms of volunteering.
Okay, great. So I think, perfect. Go ahead and hop off mute and clarify.
Hi, so I asked that question because I was having a conversation with a few of my colleagues and also other friends, and there are times, and I'm sure everybody has had this situation happen to them, where you feel you get the courage to go for something, and then you're not told no, but you're politely pushed to the side, or be like, oh yeah, sure, no, great, we'll get back to you, and you'll never, no one ever follows up with you, and even if you follow up, it's kind of falling on like deaf ears. So you are essentially passively ignored, but it's not a no. And if you do end up seeing that individual or with people, they're like, oh yes, no worries, it's just that we've had another project and we've created a new process for it. So in terms of that, I know sometimes people can get a bit deflated. How do we navigate in still being resilient and pushing for new projects and not making setbacks like that just stop us from going forward in the first place.
Great, thanks for that elaboration. So absolutely, it can be very demotivating, and that was kind of one of the aspects that I was mentioning earlier on why it's a little difficult to build these skills in a traditional setting, right? Because in an organization, the organization's needs may be different. There are so many other factors into why somebody else may be given a particular role that you might be looking for, or maybe your current role is so important that they don't want to let go of that. So there are all of these that happen, and sometimes it's to recognize, is the environment not the right one for you, and that's a harder decision. But before even getting into that decision, I would get into back into the self-reflection. Are there skills? And it's okay. It can be demotivating, and that's where finding a sponsor, finding somebody else to talk through it is helpful, because it's going to be different based on your particular situation. But if you can definitely identify what could be some of those qualities that you see in others, which could be something, then you may want to just demonstrate that, build those skills and then demonstrate that. And after that, it could always be that, hey, maybe that environment is not the right one for you. That's a harder one to get to.
So that is hard to get to. I've experienced this in my career as well, where I wish that people would just be like, straight up, just tell me, no, you're not interested, or, instead of this back and forth. And then there's this gray area, there's this uncertainty. So I totally feel what she's saying there. How can we, or is it appropriate in your opinion to ask this manager or ask this person, can you be a little more, clear with me instead of kind of keeping me hanging on? How do you ask for feedback specifically to that person so they can be more clear, so you don't feel like you lose hope?
Yeah, I think it's really important to have that relationship building and that equation with the manager or whoever that you are looking for, right? And I hope that everybody is able to get to that equation. And sometimes you cannot, and that's where it is hard. If you have the equation, I would say absolutely, because sometimes people may not realize, the manager may not realize that, hey, this is what you're looking for, this is your career growth. So just having that open conversation that, hey, I'm looking for this, maybe could you point me in other ways that I can get to that? I think it's always good to be true to yourself, be open. But if, again, going to the environment, if it's a lot of it passively ignored, which was mentioned, then it's hard. It's absolutely hard, because you're not going to be able to get honest feedback. So that's where it's good to reach out to the sponsor, reach out to a network of supporters, if you will, to identify, hey, maybe they could give feedback. And at the end, it could also be nothing about you at all, and you just have to make peace. It's not about me. It's the minute you realize it's not about me and step away from that, it's going to build your confidence. And I think that's more important, because that's how you're going to build the resilience, because you're saying, hey, I'm doing all of the right things. It's not about me. So it's okay, because I am who I am, and I'm going to continue doing the best that I can do.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Someone is doing some construction right now, so I hope you can't hear that, but I'm sure you can, because it's pretty loud.
No, we can. That's okay.
Okay, perfect. This is good. I'm going to write great reviews for the mic and for the earphones. So this next question, I love this next question. If this was your question, you're on the line. This person wants to know how to create leadership opportunities for young people.
I think this really segues into a whole different setup. But then, if you've been on this call, you've actually heard the different impediments everybody is raising on becoming better leaders. So absolutely identify projects. What ask yourself, what is hesitating, what is your hesitation in opening up any project? Is it so high impact that you're not comfortable giving it to a young person, right? Or maybe they identify a portion of it that they could lead with, right? I think that's going back to the self-awareness. Now here it's kind of pivoting on the other side. As a leader, why are you hesitating with that young person? Is it because you do not believe in their experience and capability, right? Because the minute I think it's young to have that mindset, okay, they don't have the experience. So it goes back to that underlying, how are you going to build experience if you're not going to be open, trust somebody to try it out? And there it's going to be a balance. Yes, you don't want to give somebody a whole lot. There's a very interesting, I was in a workshop and they were talking about a playground and having a conversation with somebody about, your definition of a playground. So when you're with the young leader, you want to kind of draw the playground to say, hey, these are the aspects. You don't have the experience, you have the attitude, but this is extremely critical. It has high visibility. So these are the areas where you have a free reign, like go do your thing. But these are the areas where I would like you to reach out to me for consultation. So you're kind of balancing that out. You're talking about the playground, you're talking about the boundaries within which that they can play around, get those skills, but also kind of plug yourself into that to know when to guide, when you're not going to end up micromanaging, which kind of defeats the whole purpose, right? So to have that conversation to say, hey, the reason I'm reaching out for these things is not because I distrust you, but it's because of this high visibility. Have that open conversation on why there's a hesitation, and then how you want to build that framework to say, okay, because of these aspects, I want to touch base with you at this frequency, or these are the type of matters where you need to loop me in. So that way you are building a level of comfort for yourself that this is not going to go really bad, and you still want to execute it and deliver it the way you perceived it, but you're giving that opportunity to the inexperienced person. And I don't want to call it young or old, but it's really about the experience and in relation to what you've been thinking.
Absolutely. You passed the mic perfectly to me, because I was just going to say, we speak about ageism often here at Power to Fly. So this question specifically speaks to, how can we give opportunities for younger people? I would say age ain't nothing but a number, especially in the technological realm, right? Because things are changing every day. So I would just love to hear your feedback on ageism and volunteering.
I mean, to me, age is a number. I don't look at it at all, and I think we need to make a conscious effort, right? And it is hard, right? Because it's you naturally assume it's something hardwired in us to naturally assume that a young person may not have XYZ, or somebody more senior in age is experienced. But with the changing world, there's some experiences. For example, you were talking about intentional social media, marketing yourself. That's an experience which I could say I reach out to my teenager to say, hey, what do you think needs to be done differently? How will this outreach? And I'm amazed to see the wealth of experience and insights that these youngsters have. It's a different world. The world is changing, right? And traditional marketing no longer makes sense. And they're really good about awareness through social media, and that's a skill. Which it's not the age that matters. So in a volunteering setting, it's the same thing, because if you're trying to outreach to a bunch of folks, maybe social media is the way to go, and not your traditional newsletters. And in this sense, maybe a youngster is going to be more beneficial here, right? So yeah, I would say it's not about age. It's really about the relevance and the experience and perspective, because it also boils down to opening up the broader spectrum of perspective, right? You want the young and the old, the inexperienced and the experienced, everybody offering the perspective, and that's what makes a stronger team.
Absolutely. Thank you for that clarification. That was not a submitted question, but you had me thinking of specifically because a lot of folks bring that question up, ageism and how do we approach it and just demystify it, especially in the tech space. So thank you for that. We've got about 10 minutes left, everyone. So if you have not had a chance to drop anything in the chat box or hop off mute, now's your time to shine. Until then, I'm going to move on to this next question and maybe get your gears moving. So my team is very efficient and hardworking, consistently putting in more and more effort than expected. I am thinking, how can I keep motivated during this pandemic situation? How can I keep them motivated during this pandemic situation? We tried to offer books and certification for each one, but no one has time because the workload is more.
Wow, that's to me an altogether different topic of its own, right? Like I think we can talk for an hour just on this about what the pandemic has done and what the invasion of your work life into your private life, and it's just one big mush together. What that has done for everybody's psyche, right? I think it's a very large topic. I don't claim to be an expert in the psychology of this, but I observe this. It's really hard, right? Because it also boils down to your own self motivation. You are also pulled into this. Like every individual, I think everybody is feeling the burn of the pandemic, and it's not just the pandemic, right? It's the whole how the work environment has changed. Everybody is probably connected 24 hours. People are sending emails. Earlier you would have a clear cutoff to say 5 p.m. you're done, you're off. You have to make the commute back home. And in the Bay Area, like your 2-hour commute back home. so you have to cut off. And now, because you don't have that intentional cutoff, it's just seeping into your world, and that itself just dampens productivity. So in terms of motivation, I think we all feel they are more productive because there are more hours being put into it, but over a period of time, it's losing productivity. So I would really, the motivation I would say is ask people to tune off, take the time off, recharge yourself. I think that's underlying very important. The other thing is empathy, right? And it all boils down to empathy. In fact, I had written about, how do you manage yourself in a remote work? And I've been remotely working for years and managing teams remotely for many years. But the pandemic has brought about a whole together different dimension to all of these things. So the underlying, what I feel, the essence is empathy, trying to recognize what are they looking for. Is the motivation really going to be with certifications, or is the motivation just going to be, hey, pay a listening ear? Like, can you just open up? Can you be vulnerable yourself? Which maybe is all that they might need to say, okay, you are also overwhelmed. It's okay to feel that way, right? And just be authentic, be open about, this is awesome, like what you're doing, you're putting in so many hours. Just acknowledging itself could be motivation enough. It's not necessarily about certifications and things like that. That's and again, this is such a large topic that I want to pause in terms of time, and maybe we just talk about it at a different forum.
Yes, I love that your feedback is practice more empathy. Don't give out the books, practice more empathy. Or, of course, give out the books, because sometimes books obviously have a wealth of knowledge.
And into understanding what the other person needs. And not everybody is the same, right? Like one might need the certification, but not everybody might need it. And then, finding out if that's what they need, how can you facilitate that? Because again, a leader is a facilitator, a mentor, right?
Absolutely. Okay, so we've got about 5 more minutes left. This is a great question to end this session with. So if this is your question, thank you for submitting it. Knowing your superpower as a leader is important. What is your superpower?
Yeah, for a very long time, I really believed problem solving was my superpower, because I feel I naturally just like get into that in every space. Like need to solve a problem. But over the years, I wouldn't say it's a superpower that I have, but it's the superpower that I would like to have. And that's to have this all-rounded empathy, because to me, having that is in essence a cornerstone of problem solving of everything, right? Because world across, you see a lot of challenges because of the lack of empathy, the lack of perspective. So to me, empathy and perspective are the two superpowers that I would just like to have. Not that I have it, but yeah.
Well, it's one of those things where it's, you constantly have to practice and develop. I mean, every day is different. We're seeing new challenges come, to our awareness all the time. So I think that, I definitely say that the way that you're speaking about this topic, you definitely are practicing empathy at some level. Maybe you want to continue to increase that. So you're putting your own, tips into practice. You have to set the intentional time to make sure you're developing that empathy key there. So thank you so much. Thank you for the personal response as well. Any food for thought you want to leave us with, and then let us know how we can connect with you when we finish this conversation.
Sure. I just want to leave everybody with what Limor mentioned in her beginning chat, right? It's about success isn't what you accomplish in your life. It's about what you inspire others to do. And I think that's the essence of success and successful leader. So that's what I would leave everybody with. And it all goes back to perspective, building that perspective.
Beautiful. And then how do you prefer us to connect with you online, social media, or, anything that you recommend, also with resources that you like, any books or apps or, things that help you develop your superpowers?
To me, I mean, my developing has always been just volunteering, right? As I said, I've been passionate about trying to make an impact, and that's so you'll find me any time somebody says, be it my son's scout troop, or be it at school, whatever be the situation, you'll find me the first one to say, I'll do it. Just because I want to make an impact. And so yeah, you'll find me doing that. So I don't really have books. For me, it's all about hands-on experience. I love reading books. That's a different point, but I don't have any specific books to share. In terms of reaching out, I think LinkedIn is great. And yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm definitely going to reach out on LinkedIn, and I hope that our live callers or anyone who's rewatching this video will also reach out to our guest speaker, who clearly loves putting things into practice and raising her hand. So definitely, take her up on that. Reach out with any questions that maybe we didn't get a chance to cover. And thank you so much for taking time to speak with us today. I really appreciate it. We'll see you all on the next Chat and Learn here with Power to Fly.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It was great.